Hello, today I'll be talking about 10 great rock/metal albums from the year 2005. So with these type of videos, there are of course many albums to choose from, but I decided to randomly select these 10 albums here that again I feel are great from the year 2005. So yeah, this will be in no particular order. Also, this is not a top 10, so let's go ahead and get started with Arch Enemy with their album Doomsday Machine. So for some fans, this is their best, or at least one of their best. For me, I think it's one of their best, but not quite their best. I think Wages of Sin is their best. I think that's probably my number one for me, with Anthems of Rebellion probably being my second favorite. And this album would be somewhere in the top 5 for me, but yeah, still pretty great album from Arch Enemy. I mean, you have some of their biggest songs on here like Nemesis and My Apocalypse, which are definitely some of the best songs on here, but also, Taking Back My Soul, another favorite of mine on the album. That song is definitely a banger. I definitely dig the riff work and the verses especially. Carry the Cross, another favorite of mine on the album. You also get some pretty killer guitar work on this album too, such as in songs like I Am Legend / Out for Blood or Skeleton Dance. Slaves of Yesterday is a decent song, but yeah, overall, pretty great album from Arch Enemy. And if you're a fan of melodic death metal and you haven't heard this album, definitely check it out. Now we'll be moving to some metalcore with As I Lay Dying with Shadows Are Security. So yeah, I think most people can agree with me that this is definitely one of the band's best. Some people say it's their best. I personally disagree. I think the album that came after this one, An Ocean Between Us, I think that one is their best, but this album's still definitely great. I mean, really my only issue with this album is that sometimes it does feel that some of the songs do kind of blend together a little bit, or there's not a whole lot of variety here, sometimes within the album, but still, I still think this album is overall great. I mean, some of my favorites on here: Confined, Meaning and Tragedy, Through Struggle, and of course Repeating Sunday, which I think is somewhat kind of an underrated song on here. Darkest Nights is great with its catchy, hooky chorus also. I mean, yeah, definitely a great album from As I Lay Dying, and I do like Clint's vocals too. But next we'll be moving to Avenged Sevenfold with City of Evil. For some people, this is their favorite from the band. This is probably, somewhere in the top 5, maybe top 3, but my favorite's probably the self-titled, which might be a controversial thing to say because that album seems to be somewhat divisive in a way, because that album's a bit different from the rest of their albums, but still feels like Avenged Sevenfold though. But again, self-titled has to be my favorite. Waking the Fallen is maybe my second favorite, either that album or this one. But yeah, this album, definitely great. There were some songs on here that I do remember listening to a lot when I was younger. But yeah, still an album that I think is great all these years later. I mean, some of my favorites on here: Beast and the Harlot, Burn It Down, Blinded in Chains, I think is somewhat kind of an underrated song. That's one of my favorites on here. But the bigger songs on here are definitely great. Like again, Beast and the Harlot, Backcountry, Seize the Day. When it comes to their ballads, I think Seize the Day is definitely one of their best ballads by far. MIA is another pretty solid song on here. Sidewinder, another great song. But yeah, Avenged Sevenfold, City of Evil, definitely one of the band's best, and an album that I definitely had to mention here for this video. And now we're moving to some new metal with Disturbed with their album 10,000 Fists. Some people point to The Sickness as their best, but for me, this album has to be at the top for me. I mean, so many bangers on here. This album can maybe benefit from some trimming potentially, maybe, but even with saying that, I still think this album is their best. I mean, so many killer songs on here. Some songs on here that are definitely some of the band's best, I'd say, like Just Stop and Stricken, and of course the title track 10,000 Fists. But I think this album also has some pretty good deep cuts. Some of the lesser known songs in here I think are really good, like Sacred Lie and Guarded. Same with I'm Alive, that's another really good song on here. But yeah, honestly, pretty great album from Disturbed, and again, definitely one of their best. And next we'll be moving to some prog metal with Dream Theater with their album Octavarium. So yeah, this is probably in my top 5 when it comes to top 5 favorite Dream Theater albums. My top 5 is probably Images and Words, Awake, Scenes from a Memory, this album, and Train of Thought. Of course, let me know your thoughts on my top 5, and of course, let me know your top 5 if you're a Dream Theater fan. But yeah, this album, definitely pretty great. I mean, some of my favorites on here, Root of All Evil. I really dig the melodic chorus and These Walls. These Walls is maybe growing to be maybe one of my favorite Dream Theater songs. Panic Attack, which was one of the first Dream Theater songs I ever heard. I really like that song, another favorite of mine on the album. And the title track, while I do like it, does it need to be 24 minutes? I don't know if I'd go that far, but even with that, I still think it's overall a pretty solid track. But yeah, Octavarium by Dream Theater, definitely a great album. Next, we're moving to some death metal with Obituary with their album Frozen in Time. So yeah, I was recently talking about this album in a recent video when I was comparing this album to Gateways to Annihilation by Morbid Angel. If you haven't checked out that video, definitely check it out after this video right here. Again, if you like Obituary or Morbid Angel. But yeah, this album, I mean, it was their comeback album at the time, and I think it's still great. When I saw them live, they opened up with Redneck Stomp, which after seeing them perform that song live, it made me appreciate that instrumental much more. But yeah, On the Floor and Insane, definitely some of the best songs on here. I like Blindsided, which is a bit of a more mid-tempo song. Mindset and Slow Death are also pretty solid tracks on here, and also some of my favorites. But yeah, Frozen Time, definitely a great Obituary album, and I think it can stand up with some of their earlier work, some of it, but yeah. And now we'll be moving to an album that I definitely had my share of nostalgia for, because this was an album that I listened to a lot when I was younger, especially around middle school, 7th, 8th grade, somewhere around there. This was an album that I listened to a lot, and that album is Start a War by Static X. This was the first album I bought from the band. Before buying this album, I think I heard The Only, Push It, and maybe a few other songs. I can't remember, but yeah, this album definitely pretty awesome. And if you're a nu metal fan, or even if you like industrial metal, definitely check this album out. I mean, Static X, definitely a great band. A band that never really repeats themselves. I mean, even with all their albums, at the end of the day, it all still sounds like Static X or feels like Static X. But again, a band that never really repeats themselves with their albums. But this album kind of has a darker tone or feel to it, and I really dig it. I mean, the first 7 songs especially, I remember listening to a lot when I was younger. So, I mean, some of my favorites on here, I'm the One, Pieces, which I think is one of their most underrated songs, Dirt House, which is one of the fan favorites on here. I absolutely love that song. Just in Case and Set It Off are a couple other songs on the album I think are some of their most underrated songs. I Want to Fucking Break It is definitely through and through a banger for sure. Night Terrors, another song that I find is kind of overlooked, kind of underrated on the album, but yeah, pretty good album. And again, if you like nu metal or industrial metal, please check this album out. Definitely give it a listen if you haven't heard it, or if you haven't heard it in a while, definitely give it another listen. But yeah, rest in peace Wayne Static for sure. His vocals, again, to no surprise, are definitely great on here. Next, we'll be moving to System of a Down with Mesmerize. So yeah, they released 2 albums in 2005. I decided to only talk about one of the 2, the one that I like more, and that is this one. I do like Hypnotize, but I definitely like this album much more. But yeah, System of a Down, another band that I listened to a lot when I was younger, especially Toxicity and Steal This Album. But this album, I mean, pretty great for sure. There's maybe 1 or 2 songs that are kind of in it for me, but that's really it though. I mean, overall, a pretty strong album from System of a Down. I mean, you have some of their big songs on here, that a big one being BYOB, which is definitely one of their best songs. Cigario, lyrically interesting, but still definitely a pretty fun song. Same with track number 6, This Cocaine Makes Me Feel Like I'm on This Song, which, if I remember correctly, is a fairly short song that's only like a little over 2 minutes, but I do really like that song. Violet Pornography, Question are other pretty great songs on here. But yeah, if you like System of a Down, then of course you'll enjoy this album. But yeah, definitely a great album, and another album that I had to mention in this video. The next we're moving to 1,000 Foot Crutch with their 3rd album, The Art of Breaking. But yeah, this album, I mean, Something you notice with this album compared to the two albums that came before it is that you notice a sense of maturation. I mean, with their first album, you can tell they were fairly young at the time, and they did have a little bit of growing up to do. But still, I did like their first album though. Set It Off. The second album was Phenomenon, which I think is their best. That one has to be my favorite. That one, in the end, is Where We Begin, and this album, I'd say, are probably their best. But yeah, again, definitely a great album, and sure, there's not a whole lot here that's all that complex. I mean, again, this is 2005. With the 2005, you did still have some nu metal in there. Nu metal wasn't as big in 2005 compared to some past years, like 2003 or 2000 or 99, but I mean, with this album, it's simple, catchy nu metal, and again, if you like nu metal, definitely check out this album and the album before it too, Phenomenon. But I mean, some of my favorites on here: Absolute, Slow Bleed, Stranger, which I think is hands down one of their most underrated songs. I really like that one. Hand Grenade, kind of a banger. I really like that song. Move, which is the big song on the album. That song is also pretty good. Make Me a Believer is hands down easily one of my favorites from the second half of the album. But yeah, overall, a great album, as I mentioned earlier. And again, if you haven't heard this album, definitely check it out. Again, if you like nu metal. But now we'll be moving to the final album for this video, and we're ending off with some metalcore with Ascendancy by Trivium. So yeah, I mean, I think most of us can agree that this is at least one of the band's best. Some people say it's their best. I disagree with that. Shogun has to be at the top for me. I mean, when it comes to the world of metalcore, Shogun is definitely up there. It definitely sets the bar high. Definitely in the top. Definitely a top 5 metalcore album for me, at least. Maybe top 3. But this album is also definitely great and also one of their best. I mean, if I had to pick what my favorite Trivium albums are, it'd probably be this album, Sin the Sentence, and Shogun. But yeah, this album definitely great. I mean, some of my favorites on here: Rain, Pull Harder on the Strings of Your Martyr, which is definitely one of the band's classics, definitely one of the fan favorites on here. But the title track, I mean, that song has to be in my top 10 favorite Trivium songs. It has to be. I mean, the title track, I mean, I remember when I heard that song for the first time, I just remember being blown away by the guitar work and how much I really dug the chorus, especially. But yeah, definitely always been one of my personal favorites on the album. A Gunshot to the Head of Trepidation, which is another single off the album, another really great song. You have Like Light to Flies, which is one of the fan favorites on here, another great song. You also have the ballad Dying in Your Arms, also great. The Deceived is another song that's always been one of my favorites on the album too. But yeah, definitely a metalcore classic and definitely great for sure. And when it comes to metalcore, I think Trivium might be my favorite actually, or at least in the top 3 when it comes to top 3 favorite metalcore bands. But anyways, that is 10 great rock/metal albums from the year 2005. Let me know your thoughts on my picks here. Let me know if you can think of more albums that are great in the world of rock and metal in 2005 in the comment section below. Let me know favorite or least favorite albums or songs from this year and all that good stuff. But anyways, thanks for watching. Please leave a comment and a like. Subscribe. Have a nice day and take care, guys.